Ever get hit with a wave of memory because a song comes on? Like, bam, you're back in high school or something.
It's amazing how powerful our senses are, right?
Totally. But it makes you wonder, like, what if not everyone has that same experience? What if some people are missing some of those channels, those sensory things?
Ah, you're talking about what we're diving into today.
Mm.
How we understand reality, especially for people born without certain senses.
Exactly. And we've got some wild ChatGPT research on this. You ready to get into it?
Absolutely. Let's unravel this.
So get this, ChatGPT, it throws out this stat about how congenital deaf blindness, being born both deaf and blind, it's only like 1 in 100,000 people. Crazy rare.
It really makes you rethink those assumptions we have about everyone experiencing the world the same way.
For sure. And then it gets even wilder, like being born without a sense of smell or taste even.
Anosmia and agesia.
Yeah, those words, I wouldn't even know those existed without your research dive. But the thing is, ChatGPT just drops these figures like it's nothing. Makes you wonder how many people are out there living with these conditions and have no clue it's different for others.
And that's where it gets really interesting, right? ChatGPT brought up this thing called congenital insensitivity to pain, CIP.
CIP. Okay.
And there was this woman, Jo Cameron. She didn't even realize she had it until later in life.
Hmm.
Imagine living for decades, never feeling pain.
Whoa, hold on. So she had no idea. How is that even possible?
It really highlights how subjective our experience of the world really is. What we consider normal can be completely different for someone else.
That's mind-blowing. If someone can go that long without realizing they're not feeling pain, what else are we missing? It's like, how do you even begin to understand what your reality is lacking if you've never known anything different?
Right. It completely challenges the whole idea of an objective truth, doesn't it? We tend to assume everyone experiences the world in a similar way, but when you look at these sensory variations, it becomes clear that perception is incredibly individual. We each essentially live in our own unique sensory world, shaped by the combination of senses we're born with.
So we're not just talking about interpreting reality differently, but actually experiencing completely different realities.
Exactly. And you know what's fascinating? This idea of subjective reality isn't some fringe theory. When you dive into the science of senses and perception, like neuroscience, they all point to the same conclusion. Our brains aren't just passively recording reality, they're actively building it.
Which makes sense when you think about it. Our brains are just receiving these electrical signals from our senses. It's not like we're experiencing the world directly. It's more like our brains take those signals and create a simulation, a representation of reality.
Exactly. It's like with color, for example. Color doesn't actually exist outside our perception. What we perceive as color is just our brain interpreting different wavelengths of light.
Wait, so you're saying the sky isn't really blue? You're blowing my mind right now. But if it's all subjective, how do we all seem to agree on what color things are?
Well, our brains, they've evolved to process those light waves pretty consistently. We've kind of developed a shared language and understanding of color. But even then, there are going to be subtle differences in how each of us actually perceives color, based on things like lighting, even cultural influences,
Yeah.
even individual differences in our eyes and brains.
So even something we think is objective, like color, it's still filtered through this lens of our own perception.
Yeah, exactly.
Huh. Makes you wonder what else we each experience differently. It's like we're all living in slightly different versions of reality. It's like, whoa, we think we're all on the same page, but maybe we're not.
Yeah, and that actually connects to something you brought up in your research, the forbidden experiment.
Oh, right. Like trying to figure out what reality really is by taking away all the subjective stuff.
Like those researchers who tried to raise kids without language.
Yeah, hoping some like pure form of communication would just appear.
And they found out that language is totally social. We build it together. So maybe our hunt for objective reality has the same problem.
So you're saying maybe there isn't some pure reality out there, just the reality we make by experiencing things and talking about them.
Exactly. It's more about figuring out how those individual realities, those subjective experiences, work together and shape our world.
So instead of trying to find the one truth, it's more about how all these different perspectives fit together.
And that takes us to those definitions of objective and subjective that you came up with.
Oh, yeah. You mean like thinking of the objective as that physics stuff with all the laws and predictability?
Right. And you said that even though we can't directly experience that objective world, it's still the foundation for our subjective experiences, like the playing field.
Because even when we're figuring out physics, those objective laws, we're still using our own subjective experience to understand them.
We can't escape it. It's like even the objective world is something our minds create.
Whoa. Okay, and then my definition of subjective, that was about information.
The it from bit idea. I love
Yeah,
that.
yeah, like reality is just information, and our subjective experiences are how that information becomes, real to us.
And you describe this subjective realm as being limitless. All that potential, always changing. While the objective world, with its fixed rules, is just one way that potential can show up.
Like the objective world is just one still image, but the subjective world is the whole movie, with endless possibilities for how the story could go, and each of us is watching our own unique cut.
That's a great analogy. And to explain how we go from limitless potential to a single fixed reality,
Mm.
you use the example of quantum wave collapse.
Oh, right, because those quantum particles, they're like in the state of maybe being anything until someone looks at them and then boom, they have to choose.
It's like that saying, get it out of your head and onto paper. Those limitless ideas have to become something real through our choices and actions.
So we're not just puppets of some predetermined plan.
Maybe not. You also brought up this interesting concept, experiential perceptions, or EPs. So physics might set the stage, but it's our EPs that give the play meaning.
The why behind the what.
Exactly. And you pointed out that we use language that reflects that. Like there are forces of attraction and desire. It's like we get that these subjective experiences have their own power over us.
They drive us to do things, for sure.
It's the core of being human. And
Yeah.
unlike those four fundamental forces in physics, you said our EPs, our feelings, they're almost limitless.
Because physics is fine sticking with just four forces, but human experience? Come on, there's way more going on than that.
And those possibilities aren't just endless. They can even contradict each other without messing everything up. You could be happy and sad at the same time, like those bittersweet moments in life.
So if we've got all these limitless EPs shaping our inner world, the question becomes, do we have any say in them?
Do we just go along for the ride?
Exactly. And that brings us to your idea of advanced free will, right? It's like, are we really in control or are we just running on autopilot?
Yeah, are we calling the shots or just along for the ride? Because right now, it seems like a lot of our EPs, those feelings, they're pretty much on default.
Like we're stuck with the factory settings.
Right. We crave certain foods. We get scared in certain situations. It's all biology and conditioning. But advanced free will, that's about the possibility of changing those default settings.
So instead of being controlled by our biology, we could actually choose which EPs we want.
Choose how we respond to them. Imagine being able to decide to feel joy or peace, not just by chance, but as a conscious decision.
Okay, so it's not about pretending the negative feelings aren't there. It's about like knowing them so well that we get to decide how they affect us.
Exactly. Taking control of our inner world. It's like, remember those kids raised without language? We're like that with our feelings right now.
We don't have the words for it, so we don't know how to control it.
But AFW, it's like developing a whole new language for our feelings, a language
Mm.
of conscious experience.
So instead of just reacting to life, we could actually choose the experience we want to have. That's a game changer.
It's powerful stuff. And that's where the whole idea of higher consciousness gets real. It's not some mystical thing. It's about taking responsibility for what's happening inside us.
Because if we believe that reality is shaped by how we experience it, then learning to control that experience, that's the ultimate power.
Absolutely.
But okay, how do we do that? Where do we even start?
You actually gave a really good starting point. I made it up.
Wait, really? Because usually we say that like it's a bad thing. Like, oh, you just made that up.
Right, but what if we owned it? What if we really believed that on some level we are making it up? Our experience, it's a construction. And if it's a construction, we can make different choices, right?
So it's not about pretending the outside world isn't real. It's about realizing we have a say in how we experience it.
Exactly. It's a small shift in thinking, but it's huge. Because when you get that, I made it up, it can be incredibly freeing.
Freeing, sure, but doesn't it get kind of, I don't know, nihilistic? If we
Yeah.
tell ourselves everything's made up, doesn't that mean nothing matters?
That's where I think people get tripped up. It's not that nothing matters, it's that nothing inherently matters.
Yeah.
We get to create the meaning.
So it's not about giving up. It's about realizing we have the power to decide what's important.
And that's where AFW comes in. If we can choose our EPs, if we can master our inner experience, then we become the creators of our own reality.
Wow. Instead of just coloring in the lines, we get to draw the lines ourselves.
And maybe even choose the colors.
That's amazing. But it's also kind of a big responsibility, right? If we can shape reality with our minds, we have to be careful what we create.
Absolutely. If we have this power, we've got to use it well, not just for ourselves, but for everyone around us.
It's exciting and a little scary at the same time. A lot to think about for sure.
It really is.
Okay.
But thinking about it is how we start to understand the possibilities.
That's a great point to end on, I think. Recognizing the power we have to shape our own experiences and in turn shape the world around us.
It's about realizing that reality isn't just something we observe, it's something we participate in, something we create. Because you go about your day, remember, what if you are making it up? And what will you choose to create next?